The two most popular videos on my channel have both been demonetized. YouTube hasn't given me a reason, but it's probably because they cover controversial political topics. This means that I can't rely on ad revenue alone to support my channel. If you want to support my work, please consider donating monthly to my Patreon or giving me a one-time tip on Ko-fi, link in the description. Any money that you provide will be directly supporting me and my channel. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming. Donald J. Trump is one of the worst presidents in American history. Worse than George W. Bush. Worse than Warren Harding. Still not as bad as Andrew Johnson, though. But why is he so bad? Well, part of it is that he's a conservative, and conservative policies are generally bad for the economy, the people, and the planet. But what makes him worse than other conservatives is that he's just a terrible person. He cons everyone who works for him, he turns on anyone who doesn't give him their full, undying loyalty, he does things to women that I cannot state in the first 30 seconds of a YouTube video, he's selfish, he wants to be a dictator, and, most infamously, he doesn't care about facts. He lives in his own reality, but his cult members will follow him wherever he goes. One of Trump's biggest delusions is that birthright citizenship in the United States, the idea that anyone born in the US is automatically a citizen, isn't a thing. And that's what we'll be talking about in today's episode of Progressive Primers. When Trump became president, he signed an executive order on day one that reinterpreted the 14th Amendment and instructed the federal government not to recognize citizenship of the children of undocumented immigrants born on U.S. soil.
It's a big one.
What about that one in the courts? That one is likely to be passed.
Could be. I think we have good grounds, but you could be right. I mean, you'll find out.
This order has been subsequently laughed out of every courtroom in America for being absolutely ridiculously unconstitutional. Every time a court strikes it down, the Trump administration throws a hissy fit and lashes out at our judicial system, as fascists tend to do. But Hadi, why are these rogue, unelected judges striking down the orders of our democratically elected president? 'Cause that's how checks and balances work? The president doesn't have the right to do whatever he wants. He needs to act within the confines of the Constitution. If he exceeds those confines, the court's job is to strike down his illegal actions. You guys are the party of limited government. You should already know this. Also, judges aren't totally rogue actors. Like, they're appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. One of the judges that struck down the order was Trump appointed. Now, I know what you're thinking. This order is absurd. The Constitution clearly grants birthright citizenship. It comes from the first sentence of Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, which reads, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside." That's pretty much the clearest the Constitution has ever been. So, I know what you're thinking. What was even the administration's logic? Well, our president, in his infinite wisdom, has always maintained that birthright citizenship isn't a real thing, and he's long advocated for getting rid of it, including during his first term, when he tweeted, "So-called birthright citizenship, which costs our country billions of dollars and is very unfair to our citizens, will be ended one way or the other. It is not covered by the 14th Amendment because of the words, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Many legal scholars agree." Oh, so he just actually doesn't know what words mean. Trump's argument here is that undocumented immigrants are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States because they came here illegally, and that's not remotely how anything works. Undocumented immigrants are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, even if they came here illegally. Jurisdiction means the power to make and enforce legal decisions and judgments. It means U.S. laws apply to them. If U.S. laws don't apply to undocumented immigrants, then why are they considered illegal? According to Trump's logic, they're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, so U.S. laws don't apply to them. So they've committed no offense by crossing the border illegally or overstaying their visas. That means Trump has no right to deport them to CCOT in El Salvador or throw them into a concentration camp in Florida. By the way, he doesn't have the right to do those things either way, especially without due process, but that's a separate issue. Like, let's pretend that the Trump administration wasn't fascist and just conservative, and they deported undocumented immigrants by taking them to court, proving that they're in this country illegally, and then expelling them. In this case, the court and the cops have the jurisdiction to deport undocumented immigrants. This makes them, even if they're here illegally, subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Everyone on U.S. soil, regardless of citizenship status, is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, except for two groups. The first being diplomats, which is what this amendment was trying to specifically address in the jurisdiction clause. Diplomats have diplomatic immunity and are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States or any country where they work. This means that they do not have to follow the laws of the country they work in, but rather the laws of the country that they represent. This immunity usually extends to their immediate family. Thus, the children of diplomats are not automatically citizens of the United States, even if they're born on U.S. soil, because them and their parents are not subject to America's jurisdiction. So the children of diplomats are the first group that isn't automatically granted citizenship upon birth. What's the second group? American Samoans. American Samoa is a U.S. territory, just like Puerto Rico or Guam. However, unlike all other U.S. territories, its citizens are not considered citizens, but rather American nationals, non-citizens who have limited rights despite being born on U.S. soil. Now, this seems like a grave injustice, and that's how I felt when I initially heard about American Samoa. But when researching for this video, I found out that many Samoans don't want citizenship because they fear it will cause them to lose their land rights and indigenous political system. So the question of whether or not to grant them full citizenship remains a controversial topic in Samoa to this day. But yeah, long story short, birthright citizenship doesn't apply to them either. In sum, Trump's logic is just insanely wrong, and the executive order he signed uses the same reasoning, which is even more embarrassing because it means that professional lawyers wrote this out for him to sign and then had to argue it in court using this crazy logic. It's also embarrassing for Ben Shapiro, who has a law degree from Harvard, so I know he's lying, to perpetuate the same talking point about the jurisdiction clause.
Born or naturalized, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. What is this meant to exclude? It's meant to exclude people who are foreign citizens who are not here permanently. That's what it is meant to exclude.
Wrong.
But this whole fiasco has sparked a new national debate about birthright citizenship, and if we should get rid of it. Before we address this, let's take a look at where we got birthright citizenship from. Birthright citizenship has been around long before the 14th Amendment, or even the founding of this country. It was a principle going back to Old English common law, known as jus soli, or the right of soil. The idea that if you're born within the king's realm, you are a citizen of the realm and subject to the king's laws. This contrasts with jus sanguinis, or right of blood, which is citizenship granted based on your parents' nationality. The U.S., being a former British colony, had its legal system rooted in English common law. Thus, it was just assumed by most people that anyone born in the U.S. was a citizen. But this assumption was never formally written down. Because it had never been formally written down, the Supreme Court was free, in 1857, to just straight up say that African Americans are and never could be citizens, whether free or slave. This ruling, in the case Dred Scott v. Sanford, was the worst in the history of the Supreme Court. It led directly to the Civil War and had to be overruled with the 14th Amendment, which explicitly said, if you're born in America, you are an American, regardless of race. The Trump administration insists that this amendment was only meant to apply to newly freed slaves, but that's such cope because the amendment is pretty clear when it says all persons. Plus, the framers of this amendment wrote it in part to reaffirm the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which said that any person born in the U.S. is a U.S. citizen. So yeah, it's pretty clear that the Trump administration is just plain wrong in every conceivable way. And many on the far right concede this, but still think that we should get rid of birthright citizenship as a principle. What are their arguments as to why? I mean, who would oppose such a, oh look, it's Charlie Kirk?
You can fly to China and literally just come here as a visitor, show up at a hospital, and, they will give you a U.S. passport and your kid becomes a U.S. citizen.
Yes. And you know what? That's a good thing. Why? Because it incentivizes that entire baby's family to move to the U.S. via immigration. and immigration is, overall, objectively, an enormously positive thing for a country's development. Studies show that increased immigration increases GDP. To say they're stealing jobs is a fallacy because all workers are also consumers, and immigrant spending power can create jobs. Immigrants also commit less crimes than natural-born citizens, even undocumented ones. They also use significantly less welfare while still paying taxes. Immigrants contribute to the great American melting pot. They assimilate to our culture and also add in their own contributions. Do you like pizza? Do you like burgers? Do you like California rolls? Do you like orange chicken? Well, then you'll love immigration. And finally, perhaps the most underrated advantage, increased immigration increases birth rates because immigrants tend to have more kids than native-born Americans. This is crucial if you want to support Social Security, Medicare, and the economy as a whole. You'd think that all the right-wingers on Twitter who are obsessed with birth rates and population decline would welcome immigration, but they don't because of course they only want white babies being born. When brown people have babies, it's replacement, even though, no, it's coexistence. We're losing our culture! Again, no. Immigrants assimilate and contribute to American culture, and the children of immigrants, especially in America, tend to be super assimilated. I mean, look at me. Neither of my parents were born here, yet I have an American flag in my dorm room and 3 copies of the Constitution, including on my wall. But continue, Charlie. Tell me why I'm wrong.
You understand we are one of the only countries in the industrialized world that has birthright citizenship?
And I'm proud to be that. We are a country of immigrants. See,
no, we're not. No. We're a country of
give me-
settlers, not of immigrants.
Okay.
That's a big distinction. Let me tell you the difference. Settlers are people that build a new country that was barren. Immigrants come to a country already built. The people who built this country, they went west to an unconquered, barren country and built a new society. Immigrants helped enrich it. They helped grow it upon that. But the foundation of America were settlers, not immigrants.
Okay, first off, America was a barren land until we had European settlers. F off, Charlie. This nation was founded on Native American genocide. Not acknowledging that is disgusting. And secondly, immigrants also built this country. Like, literally. Immigrant labor, particularly from Italy, Germany, and Ireland, was used extensively to construct major American cities during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Even today, 30% of construction workers in the US are immigrants. So for Charlie to say that immigrants didn't build this country, it's just patently absurd when they very much did in perhaps the most literal sense. But Hadi, he's not talking about who literally built America. He's talking about it in like a figurative sense. Our ideals. That wasn't built by immigrants. Alright, well then allow me to introduce you to Alexander Hamilton, a founding father and immigrant from St. Kitts and Nevis. Hamilton's economic vision for the US was that of an industrial powerhouse with a strong commercial sector. This contrasted with the Jeffersonian vision of an agrarian economy of yeoman farmers. On the economic side at least, it was Hamiltonianism that won out. Hamiltonian policies in the late 18th century set forth America's economic destiny. America did eventually become a nation of industry. Hamilton's creation of the First National Bank stabilized the nation's finances and provided it with a reliable line of credit. Love him or hate him, and I have a lot of criticism of Alexander Hamilton, both personally and politically. You have to admit that his economic prediction was ultimately correct, and what America eventually became. And it was his policies that directly contributed to that. America's financial system was built by an immigrant. I also have to mention that Hamilton's political ideal of a strong central government with implied powers also won out in the end. The Federalist Papers, of which Hamilton wrote 51, play an enormous role in shaping how we interpret the Constitution and view the role of government. Alexander Hamilton was probably the 3rd most important founding father behind Washington and Madison. And he was an immigrant. Now, if I told Charlie these arguments in person, his head would probably explode, and he would say something amounting to, Hamilton doesn't count because he's white, or whatever. In fact, that's basically Charlie's whole argument. Immigrants didn't build this country, except for the first ones, except we don't call them immigrants, we call them settlers, and no, not the actual first ones, but the first white ones. Another argument you hear against birthright citizenship is this.
My claim is we should get rid of birthright citizenship. By allowing for birthright citizenship and not interpreting the Constitution as we're legally allowed to and restrict, the automatic citizenship of anybody who's born here, we actually remove the issue, for example, of family separation, because there is no incentive of a family to come over to this country illegally and then have a child, which is contributing to the awful situation we have in America of breaking up families. This is not something that I imagine you or I agree with.
No.
The issue is birthright citizenship has incentivized that.
Incentivizes family separation? Give me a break. You guys are the ones separating families. It doesn't incentivize that at all. Nothing is forcing you guys to be evil. You guys are being evil on your own. Lastly, the final argument that Charlie and other conservatives make is that birthright citizenship dilutes the value of citizenship. The idea is that birthright citizenship isn't earned, and thus citizenship means less.
It goes back to this very basic question. What does it mean to be a citizen? And we're throwing around citizenship like frisbees every day. You're a citizen, you're a citizen, you're a citizen. And it dilutes the meaning of the citizen, of what it means to be a U.S. citizen. We need to bring it back to actually say, hey, you have to earn your citizenship. You are not given your citizenship.
So this doesn't really make any sense for Charlie's case because he wants to replace birthright citizenship with citizenship by blood, which also isn't earned. But the counter to this would be that citizenship by blood is better because you should at least need to have some type of heritage or lineage in the US in order to properly earn citizenship by birth. In my last video, I talked about Charlie Kirk's insane Islamophobia, and I didn't mention a tweet where he defended himself where he said, "It's not Islamophobia to notice that a man who wants to globalize the Intifada is about to run America's largest and once greatest city. It's not Islamophobia to notice that Muslims want to import values into the West that seek to destabilize our civilization. It's cultural suicide to stay silent." An even more racist account on Twitter responded with this meme of Charlie Kirk saying, "If America were 90% Indian, but Christian, it would still be America." And Charlie defended himself by saying, "Wrong, it would not still be America. America is a people with shared histories and heritage, culture and values. Most of us, still, are Christians of European descent." Except he spelled descent wrong. Now, this is obviously blatant racism, and looking back on this now, it actually reminds me of another tweet I saw on the 4th of July from far-right commentator Jack Posobiec. "America is not an idea. America is a place. America is a people. America is our home." There's a lot wrong with this tweet, but I think JJ McCullough's response to it is perfect. If America is not an idea, but just some random place, then it's no better than Turkmenistan. I think America is better than Turkmenistan because it's based on something more than just being a place. He's right. What makes America different from other countries like Germany, Italy, Russia, Japan, etc., is that its existence is not defined by a common ethnicity, race, or religion. Sure, most of us speak English, and I do think from a practical sense, everyone in this country should be able to speak English. And sure, our founding fathers were largely white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, but if you read our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, it says nothing about America setting itself to be a white European nation. No, it simply says that our nation is founded on the principle that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. If you want a white ethno-state, move to Europe. America is a nation founded on the principle of liberty, equality, and justice for all. That is our raison d'etre, or reason for being. To be a beacon of freedom to all, and I mean all. George Washington, in a letter to a Dutch minister who emigrated to the United States in 1788, wrote, "I had always hoped that this land might become a safe and agreeable asylum to the virtuous and persecuted part of mankind, to whatever nation they might belong." Okay, but that's just one quote. In a 1785 letter to the U.S. ambassador to Spain, Washington wrote, "Rather than quarrel about territory, let the poor, the needy, and oppressed of the earth, and those who want land, resort to the fertile plains of our western country, to the second land of promise, and there dwell in peace, fulfilling the first and great commandment." Okay, but you can't just take two quotes and take... In a 1783 letter to Joshua Holmes, Washington wrote, The bosom of America is open to receive not only the opulent and respectable stranger, but the oppressed and persecuted of all nations and religions, whom we shall welcome to a participation of all our rights and privileges, if by decency and propriety of conduct they appear to merit the enjoyment. Immigration has been a part of the American story from the very beginning. Don't let these people lie to you. America should always be welcoming to immigrants, not just because it's good for our economy, birth rate, and culture, but because doing so honors our heritage and history. Thanks for watching. Once again, if you would like to support my channel, please consider donating monthly to my Patreon or Ko-fi page. Ko-fi also allows you to give a one-time tip. I'd also like to say thank you to each and every one of my new subscribers. Thanks to your button pressing, we have surpassed 10,000 subs and are still growing. Let me be the first to say welcome aboard. My channel has grown massively over the past 3 weeks, and I'm so grateful that you are a part of that growth. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in a few weeks. Oh, and also follow me on Twitter, @TheHadiRahim. Bye!